to see how this looks. Okay, we are live. I'm going to turn off the music.
Would you like some chocolate before you start?
I'll have it all the way through.
Oh, no. Not doing it.
Just, you have to mind her because.
So I'm Jamie Sweeney, and I am the owner of Juniper Art Gallery. And thank you guys so much for coming out. This is the first time we've done an artist talk for our book club. But David has this awesome book of his, it's called Figures in Landscape, and it has his drawings in it. So we thought we'd do something a little different this time and have an artist talk. And if this is fun, we may just go ahead and do lots of artist talks. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But we have a monthly book club, and it's the second Thursday every month from 2 to 3 p.m. And if you can't make it, we always record it and put it on our Juniper YouTube channel, which I invite you to sign up for. I only need like 970 more subscribers, so I can actually go mobile with it. So, yeah, so anyway. Yeah, it's a good channel, lots of good stuff on it. Whenever I do a change out for the gallery, I record the new exhibit. So, come on in. Anyway, I'm just going to do a brief introduction here. David J. Emerson Young has been obsessed with art since he was 5. He remained immersed in art while earning his bachelor degrees at Indiana University in philosophy and literature. In the early 1980s, David founded Young and Larimore Advertising Agency, where he served as CEO and executive creative director for 30 years. During that time, he continued making art. Nearly all of David's paintings start as drawings. The drawings come from his subconscious, the place he trusts most. It's as if his subconscious has a direct line to his drawing hand, and he often doesn't know what the subject is until the lines reveal it well into the drawing. Once it's recognized, he develops the image into a finished piece. Young recently completed a 21 painting series on global warming. And if you didn't have a chance to see that, I don't know, did you guys see that when it was at the Far Gallery in Bloomington? Oh, amazing artwork. Very large scale paintings on global warming, and he'll talk more about that. Yeah, and he had input from environmental scientist, Green Party leader, and Nobel laureate Andrew Weaver. Young has designed and installed nearly 100 sculptural works of public art. 46 of these sculptures reside in the Indiana State Museum's outdoor sculpture series of state counties. So he's an esteemed guest. Some of his artwork is behind you here. And I will turn it over to David. We'll just ask him some questions, but
I think you wanted to start with the story, right?
if you would like to start with a story, that would be perfect.
Oh, first grade story. Yeah, the first sign I had that I was an artist ended up being pretty horrible. But I was young. I was first grade. I didn't go to kindergarten, so I couldn't write yet. I didn't know how to write yet, and all the other kids went to kindergarten. So I raised my hand and said, I didn't go to kindergarten. I don't know how to write. And she goes, can you draw? And I go, I can draw, yeah. She gave me this book that everybody else was writing in, and I got to do about 12 drawings. And that was fun. And then she said, okay, pass them up. And I was in the back of my line. I passed mine up, and this kid in front of me goes, look at this. 5 boys get around him, and they're looking through it. And she comes down, she passes them up, grabs me, takes me to the coat hall, and paddles me for causing a chaos. That was my first day in kindergarten, or first grade, in any first grade in school. So what a day that was.
Hardcore teacher.
You heard she had the right name. Mrs. Henshaw.
Wow, that's an auspicious start to an art career.
It really was. You can't believe. I couldn't talk to my parents at home because I was like, they won't believe that I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was draw well. I got paddled, and sit in the coat hall for until lunchtime.
How did you not go to kindergarten? Neither did I.
Oh yeah, because we were out in the country and we didn't have any money, and my mom didn't drive, so yeah.
I don't remember why I didn't go to kindergarten.
You know, so
Well,
she
this must
was,
be an artist thing, because I went to kindergarten and got expelled.
oh, that's great.
But this is your platform, that's for another day.
Oh yeah, that book was full of drawings, and I took it home to my mom, and she went through the drawings, and my sisters were older than me, so they went through the drawings and like wow, and my grandmother was in Florida at the time, and so she sent it to my grandmother, and I didn't see it again until after my grandmother died, like 50 years later. And it was my aunt sent it to me, and it came back. So,
What were your thoughts of it when you saw it again?
well, I just said, well, that doesn't suck for a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because the introduction said that you kind of draw from your subconscious. Were the drawings that
Sure.
you did when you were 6 of actual objects in the real world, or were they also sort of from a
Yeah.
fantasy perspective?
Well, one of the great ones in that drawing, which is just hilarious, because I was so innocent of a kid, was when my dad was going to a gas station, and my dad was just a crazy man, bipolar to the extreme. And my friends all loved him because he was so funny, but I was always afraid, like, oh, what's going to happen next? And so here we are. My dad's doing the putting the gas. He doesn't let the tenant guy come and do it. He does it before they do it. Now we do that all the time. Now back then that wasn't usual. And my dad, the guy goes, "Can I help you?" And he's way back under a car. He walks out, and my dad goes, "No, I got it." And he goes, "Wait a minute, you've ripped me off before." And so my dad tells me, "Get back in the car." He gets in the car, doesn't take the pump out, runs off, and I look backwards and there's
Yes.
going all over the place, and my dad's dragging and the pump is in the car of the drawing I did in my first grade. It's in there, and the ends has yellow gas coming out.
Oh my gosh.
Weren't you supposed to be talking about how your summer? What was your summer? Tell us about your summer. Was the assignment from this teacher, from Mrs. Henshaw?
Oh,
She
it
said-
wasn't, just the assignment.
Did she say? I thought you said that she asked you to talk about your summer. No.
Oh, well, we were supposed to write about our summer.
Right.
And I did drawings about my summer,
That's what I'm saying.
including my dad stealing gas.
Right.
All right. Yeah, so it was, and the thing was, I got in trouble because the kids liked the drawings in front of me. And, I used to paddle me. First time I got paddled, it was a polo.
Well, you got more,
They don't count, they're like balsa wood.
you got more attention than the teacher.
Wow, the nerve.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
So had you been drawing like all the time before that though?
Yeah.
So pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, I was always
As
drawing.
long as you remember.
Yeah, I can't remember not drawing,
Yeah.
but the attention to those that got me in a lot of trouble made me start thinking maybe I'm good at this, and
Mhm.
so it kind of encouraged me a lot, and
Mhm.
I started trying with a lot more with pencil and getting the lines right before I did the crayons and that sort of thing. Gave up on doing coloring books completely after that. I just want paper, Mom.
Yeah.
So
So,
Anyway.
so when you were younger, were you making more of these kind of fantastical things like you do now that are just kind of coming from your subconscious, or were you actually trying to make, realistic drawings? at
Yeah,
a young
I
age?
was.
Yeah.
You're right. That came later. The
Mhm.
subconscious drawings that I actually do draw with just I just get a piece of paper and start a line, and I do it subconsciously. I'm not thinking about it on purpose, and it always has something that leads to and that's how I start drawings and how I begin paintings too. That if I have a specific subject, that's harder for me to do. If I have a specific thing to work on, then I have to like think about it a lot and then forget about it and let it come up, out of the hand instead of the brain.
How did your drawing evolve from being, a typical artist doing realistic work to being done in that fashion?
Well, I had a great high school art teacher, James Doversberger, who was a really serious artist. Some of you guys may know him, but he's in Indianapolis.
What school were you?
Lawrence Central in the northeast side, far away from where my dad took the gas pump from. He was a brilliant artist himself, actually, for a teacher, he taught me so much. And one of the best things he did, and most of the kids hated it, and I loved it. Friday was always Art History Day. And I got to see all the best artists in the world, and made me very humble. And the cavemen, really make you humble when you're in high school, because you look, they did this on rocks, and so it made me, it put me in my place, and helped me want to learn more. And so it started with that, and went all the way through to the modern people, and the whole picture of art has that living growth with it that was always interesting to me, and I was, I still am a bit intimidated by trying to outdo those guys. It's like, what can I do that better than they do? And it's like what you want to try to do, but it's it's an unbelievable challenge, because so much great art has, and contemporary modern art has preceded us, and so it's it's harder to beat them, to be a revolutionary as much with being a revolutionary with legitimate good work. Anyway, and it's easy to, I don't know, run a car off a bridge and film it as you're going into the water. That would be good in some places as a great piece of art, I think, now these days in some places. But I just really loved it, and ended up doing advertising. I don't need to talk about that much, but the art was the way I got into it.
So did you go to college?
I did go to college.
Where?
At IU.
And what did you major in?
Philosophy and literature, because I was at Ball State my freshman year, and the art classes were like, Mr. Doversberg taught me this already. It was like, wow, what I'm duplicating my, I did really well, but I wasn't learning. It was like, so I just dropped out of art and knew I would just do art every day. And during classes, I'd be drawing. I do have 3,300 drawings in one book this big, this deep, that big.
Wow.
from high school and college drawings while I was listening to class.
So you dated a lot.
Yeah. dated the drawings or dated the girls? Yes to both, actually. Yeah, it was. It was what kept me into art, and I could, literature and philosophy gave me more subject matter. Actually, I think philosophy not so much, but literature certainly. The visual things that great writers portray in words. It's is kind of with us. Just in a different medium.
Did you ever draw from dreams?
Yes. There were a few of them I had, and mainly they were the ones from childhood that were really spooky, and visions of my mother being killed.
Mm.
My dad did try to kill her once, and maybe twice, and he was this bipolar guy, and she finally got away from him, and life was much better. But we had to go to my uncle who had a car dealership and say, okay, we're going to buy a car. You're not to tell anybody who bought it. And we gave our mom a brand new car to drive to New England, where she loved the best to go. And so my dad couldn't find her.
Wow.
Wow.
That's how dangerous he was.
But he was not diagnosed.
No,
And he medicated on speed.
He did.
That's why.
You're right. That's
And
a
so
big
this
part
is
of it.
really- It
We-
was very,
It was amazing because like when we know Dad being really fun. My friends all thought he was the coolest dad, and I'm just like, okay, I'm not gonna tell you the real story. But we didn't know at the time. My mom didn't know at the time that he was medicating his downs with speed and amphetamines.
I have read a lot about the formative experiences of geniuses, how common it is for people who become exceptional in any field to have had childhood trauma of one kind or another.
Really?
It's really quite remarkable. I mean, you go through, people like Ansel Adams had vivid, horrifying memories of the San Francisco earthquake. Pablo Picasso had a younger sister who died a horrific death. And these were things that happened when they were children. And I wonder if you have, you're quite jovial as you recount stories of horrible experiences. And I'm wondering if you process that childhood trauma through the artwork, the fact that it's not typically representational, that you're working from the subconscious, because that's, it's an engine that drives art for a lot of people, that they've got to process what happened.
No one's ever explained that to me that directly, and yeah, I'm
It's-
sure.
it's just- yeah, it's out there.
I can look at things when I'm drawing. That when I don't paint like the really gutsy painters who just use paint and don't have a drawing on the canvas. I have to draw first. But when I'm drawing, it's all kinds of stuff comes out subconsciously. And I call my drawings all subconscious drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And it just shows up. Stuff shows up. And I'm like, oh, I know where that's from.
It's gonna be fun to look at your work now that we've heard you explain it.
Yeah.
I looked at it quite a bit before, and I was really intrigued with it. I thought this is good stuff. I really like this, but now that I know your process, it's gonna make it a lot more interesting even still.
Yeah. And I still, like when I was in classes and got 3,300 drawings done in high school, college, I still draw like that, not on small pieces of paper so the teacher can't tell I'm not taking notes, that sort of thing. But I still draw, Dina sees me all the time drawing. And I prefer it to painting, because to me, drawing is the initiator of all my other paintings, all my paintings. And
As much as you draw, do you post on social media? I'm asking because I know several artists that are really prolific and they're constantly posting.
really,
Yeah.
okay, no, I'm not on in that way at all with my art. I hardly on it, even looking for people talking to me, and I miss them a lot.
You're too busy drawing.
and trying to finish paintings. Dean is always like, "Oh, do some painting too when you go up to the studio."
You know what I think one of the things you said about being in college and high school and drawing the whole time, you obviously were learning. So it wasn't like the drawing was taking your attention away from what the teacher was saying. You were still learning, but drawing.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Yeah. And there were some teachers in high school that would tear up my drawings. One's a really great one. I this girl I didn't even know. She was right next to me. She's a year younger than me. She was real quiet in math. And Miss Beckett was the most fierce woman teacher in history, I think, at least my history. And so I would be drawing, and Miss Beckett saw me drawing, and I usually was more clever. I kind of just was too down low like this and didn't see her coming down the aisle, and sneak it in under the book or whatever. And she grabbed it and tore it up right there. And this quiet, nice girl next to me that I didn't know, a year younger than me, she jumps up and says, "You bitch, he's a real artist!" And grabbed her books and ran out. And was expelled from school for saying that. I feel horrible.
You're a troublemaker even when you're not trying.
I'm just trying, man.
You have some good stories.
Oh.
My.
So
Talk to us a little bit about, I know it's a bit of a leap, but about your global warming series, because that's just such a significant body of work for your career in life.
yeah. And the reason that I did it is because I had a lot of science work in high school and college. And because once I was out of high school and I got my first and saw what the first, classes were so simplistic. And I'm like, I'm paying to relearn this, and I just didn't go to art class anymore because I just decided I'd keep going on my own. Okay, I'm sorry. Your question was
It was just about the global warming series
Okay,
and
yeah.
how that evolved.
Yeah, and it's
yeah.
because of my love of science. I really started studying science, and also, like all of you guys, it's like, science gives us nature, and that nature gives us all the forms we want to work with, and so I've always loved science in all of its ways, but especially, the life, plants and animals.
Why don't you talk about your experience with your good friend Jeff Lawrence in Washington State when you went to go see the Demings Glacier?
Oh yeah. In fact, Jeff, we were friends because he was one of the best scientists in the class. My other best friend was the best scientist in the class, but Frank Levinson and Jeff Lawrence, and they were always interested in the creativity and stuff. And Frank turned out to be a billionaire because he was so creative as well as brilliant scientist. He's in Silicon Valley kind of legend. But Jeff took me to this, the name of it. I forget the name of the glacier.
It's called the Demings. I'm trying to. It says it's a hyphen name, but it was one of the glaciers in
near Washington,
it
near
was up
Seattle.
in Baker State Park.
Yeah, and he took me up
Baker
there,
National State Park. Yeah.
and
National Park.
it was shockingly beautiful, and the science of it was disaster. it was like it had receded. And so ancient ice was all that was showing, and it was blue and not a bubble in it. All the bubbles had been pressed out. It was like clear glass.
Wow.
And you can't believe how beautiful it is. I was lucky to be there when the sun was in a good angle. God, it took breath out of me. I just couldn't believe anything out of nature that wasn't a living thing could look so beautiful, and then I, learned about like, hey, this was a disaster actually. This beautiful thing shouldn't have happened this soon anyway. It should have been maybe 1,000 years later. But it's the global warming is why it's receding now and revealing all that ancient ice that's so beautiful in sunlight. And that really got me going on doing the global warming series.
And that was
paintings.
your first painting with
Yeah.
was when you
The
painted
blue
glacier.
painting?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I can get the card if you want me to.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But it was that was the start of it, and I went to I was talking to scientists out of state that were on the Al Gore thing, and I remember asking one of them, "Do you know anybody near Seattle or Vancouver who's one of the scientists of the global warming?" And they go, "Yeah, this guy from the University of Vancouver, Andrew Weaver." He said he's one of the main guys. He actually combined everybody's information and made it coherent and added his own and made it coherent. And that's what Al Gore read was his everybody else looked at it too and they thought he had done a great job. So I found out he was the guy, and I said, "Look, I want to do this thing on global warming." And he goes, "Well, science isn't working, maybe art can work." And that was his quote right there. And he goes, "Well, yeah, okay." And he goes, "But you got to promise me you won't exaggerate anything. Don't exaggerate what is the science. I'm going to give you what the subjects are, how far you can go with them." And so I had to show him all my drawings, all 18 drawings before, and he, like 6 of them, no. I had to do 6 over, 6 drawings over to soften it more, not make it so disastrous or something like that.
I think it'd be nice to point out the scale of these pieces.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. They're in 2 sizes.
Branson, pass them around to everybody else so they can see the.
Yeah,
These
these,
just you keep this one. Yeah.
yeah,
That's a gift?
Yeah.
yeah. I have 9 that are 4 by 7 feet, and 9 that are same proportion, but they're 6.5 by 3.5, roughly. But they're exactly 1 step down from the other. The same proportions.
7 by 5 are the large ones, 7 by 5,
Yeah.
and then
Oh, is it 5?
6 by 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah, 75 inches
Okay,
high,
but the width is what I'm.
54.
It was 54.
You guys
Okay.
know well because you had to hang that.
I had to bring in all of this.
No, and she's got twice or 5 times the memory that I have with details and stuff. Yeah.
So your art reminds me of the Zen bow and arrow shooter, where you don't think about shooting the bow and arrow, and you don't think about using your pencil.
I don't.
It's the Zen of drawing.
And it started in high school when I started just drawing on paper, and I was not trying to draw attention, and I would, and so I might even not even look at the line. I'd draw it first and then look at it and say, what can I do with that? Turn that into something, and it was drawing like that all the time. And 3,300 of them.
You know, my father, when he was teaching art, he would make people, one of his ways he would teach would be that they'd have to not look at the paper and not lift the pencil off the paper and do contour drawings,
Yeah.
but they weren't to look at it while they did it. And it
Oh.
was so interesting that.
I never did a blind drawing.
Yeah, it was really,
No.
really cool that what would come out of that, and it was, I think that the intention was to loosen people up,
Yeah.
and he did beautiful contour drawings. He would look, but where you just don't take the pencil off the paper and just
Wow.
keep working.
That's cool. That's a cool thing to
Remember, I was trained as a teacher of gifted and talented children. That was my field. And one of the categories that we would try to evaluate kids in to see if they needed additional services was a creativity test that consisted of it was a page, and it had just some squiggles on it. And you hand it to them and say, use what's on this paper, do something with it. And then there was an actual way of evaluating the responses. If the kid takes the semicircle and turns it into a sun up in the sky, that's not a real high response because that's kind of trite.
It's obvious.
So if they do responses that are very sort of a standard, kid drawing of a lollipop tree and a sun and, a straight line horizon, whatever, that is a kind of ordinary response. But there would be other kids who would look at this and see something so completely wild. And it was clear as day to just look at these things, to see they would just be starting with a fragment of a line. And depending on how, absurd or, far-fetched the interpretation of the line was, it just showed you how the kid was thinking. It was really cool to see the results, what they would do with them.
That's how I start all my real work. I'm not like in global warming. I've got a subject, so I try as much as I can to work the way I normally work when I'm not have a subject in mind, but just want to start a drawing and see where it goes. And I just do a loop like that. When I was in class and then I couldn't keep looking at my drawing. I had to look up the teacher every once in a while. So, I do a line, and that's where I got started doing that. Okay, I got that going.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
A lot of kids start drawing early on as a coping mechanism when they're in school. It's like something to help them alleviate the pressure of having to deal with an alternate reality other than their home life, which you're accustomed to.
Yeah.
And
I didn't go to kindergarten, so man,
in first grade, whatever, I did when I was in school all the time. I just wonder if that was something you relate to.
Oh, I did. I really, and I did have a crazy father, and and there was that tension that my mom might be gone when I get home and stuff like that would sometimes be that bad. It wasn't always that bad, but it was. And to be honest, both my sisters and I and my brother saved our mom's life at least twice each. So it was that affected something about my art. I think I've had to. And there were some things that came out that teachers were, kind of shocked at, and I would have to come out and say, well, my dad, and then they go, okay, here, back. I didn't want anything to do with it after the story was told. But they weren't all like that at all. But they did come out. I think all of us have that come out when we're artists. You go, oh yeah, and what I'm doing now.
So I have a question about your titles, because I love the titles that you place on your drawings, and I wonder how you come about them.
Oh, see.
Do you just look at it when you're done and make up a title?
Yes.
Okay,
They're
it's
all
like this
kind
one
of-
I love. It's called Looking for the God Particle. The dream he had of tattoos. A couple discussing fishing. Thought wave. Nuclear So, I mean, I just think he has really creative titles, which is really interesting to me too. And there's a lot of original drawings in here as well that aren't framed, if you want to look at them later. But I just want to hear about how you do that, really.
Well, it came a little bit later. I mentioned I had a great high school art teacher, and I was going to have to duplicate what he taught me for like 2 or 3 or 4 semesters before I could get into the studio classes. And so I said, I can't wait that long. I know where I am, and I'm beyond the first classes and stuff. And so I decided to do philosophy and literature together. The two of them together made it more interesting. I like literature a lot, and I did become somewhat of a poet. I could have been a poet if but I went back to painting as soon as I graduated. I always want to be artist most. But I did get some poems published in magazines, and that's as far as I got, really.
That's far.
That's far, I was gonna say, that's pretty good.
They weren't necessarily great magazines. so we're not good paper or anything. But it was and I'd be drawing and writing literature. Doing poems and reading literature. And I think that helped my art. Like James Joyce, if you've ever read him. His imagery is it's like a movie in your head if you're reading it right, and it's that's visual in a way. It's literature that's like a movie.
Well, I can kind of see, I mean, the question I had about the titles, that you probably look at your work when you're finished with it and a story kind of comes out of it in your own observation of your subconscious drawing, then a story evolves as well,
Yeah.
Or a poem.
Or a poem.
Yeah, they almost sound like they're
They
just
do.
like fragments of the poem.
But knowing your background in literature and philosophy and all that, it makes it clearer. It does show up in your drawings, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Didn't waste the.
You didn't waste your degree.
Oh God, my uncle Bobby, he loves me. But my mother was from a really poor family of 11 children in Appalachia and the southern Kentucky, and they grew up there. And when I was going to college, I was on a Pell Grant, and my uncle Bobby just yelled at me for like 20 minutes one day. Your mom's about to get you into college, and I'm just waiting. Bobby, Mom's not paying anything for me. He goes, what? Because nobody believed. I was a C+ student in high school, and when they announced that I got a Pell Grant in front of the whole school, what do you call those congregations of and my class's valedictorian was Stephanie Young, same last name. And, everybody was laughing because they just like,
When it was announced that you.
they announced it and everybody just howled because they knew, oh, big mistake. Dumb job.
Oh, that's hysterical.
And I stormed into the principal's office. And one of the assistant principals, really good guy, he rushed in and said, David, no, you really did get it. That's impossible. I'm a C- student.
It had to do with your SAT scores
SATs.
in biology, right? You did
Not biology so much. The biology test in the SATs I took, and I aced that one. So it was the you get English and math, and then
science.
A choice or something like that.
Hmm.
And I took that choice. And
That's what it.
but everybody was just howled that I gotta,
So you were an example of the kind of student that I was put into schools to find. Because my field was giftedness in children, and children who are divergent thinkers frequently don't fit in to the curriculum in school, and frequently do end up being C students or lower, because the classes are boring, they're not moving fast enough, they're just not engaged, their mind is elsewhere.
I was drawing.
Thank goodness you had your art teacher, because if you hadn't had your art teacher, who knows what would have become, because, when you think about all the kids who are
Yeah.
not motivated, not reached by the cookie cutter kind of educational system, don't get the resources, the stimulation.
That's wonderful. Did you find a lot of kids that?
Oh, gosh,
There are
yeah.
a lot that were
One,
not doing well.
The kid with the drawing, the kid who did the drawing.
Oh, yeah, I remember this kid. He was his family were immigrants from Paraguay, very poor, and it was a very wealthy town, and half the students were the people who worked on the estates as the gardeners and the housekeepers, and another half were rich kids. And so he was from the poor half.
Yeah.
And he was able to draw pictures from any viewpoint. So like he could draw a view of a horse as though you were in the air looking down at the running horse. The head and the back and the tail flying out, and as if you were up above.
Memory of
He
the
could just
horse.
visualize
Visualizing.
things in any.
This is how old the kid?
He was 7.
Oh,
He could visualize things in any direction. Talk about a spatial, genius.
Yeah.
It was genius. And you would see that, in all kinds of places. I mean, you'd have a kid we had a girl who had fetal alcohol syndrome and did terribly in all her subjects, but she had eye-hand coordination like you wouldn't believe. She could do origami. She'd see it once and she could do it. So there are, the brain's so complicated. And when schools teach it only one way for everybody, it's a disservice to
Oh, absolutely. And
so many kids.
And aptitude is based on test scores.
It can,
and SAT scores. And
Absolutely, which is just, that is a kind of aptitude, but it's like just one, good test taking ability is like one little thing over here, and it's a shame.
And emotional intelligence.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that we understand about it now that unfortunately we're backsliding a lot.
Yeah, I think to go back to what David said about his art teacher kind of saving his life, I think that is so common. It was that way for me. It was that way for Ransom, I know, in high school.
And for me too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it was like
Yes.
I was very intelligent, but also from kind of a troubled, crazy family, although they were artists and wonderful, not violent or anything, but just a lot of tension in the family. And I think my focus became art. Art is all I wanted to do. And so every art class I ever had, I got like an A+, and I would get an A+ in English because I love to write. And I would get, a good grade in anything that I was interested in where I could be creative. But the other classes, like by the time I'm in high school and I'm a big troublemaker, by that time, I'm getting like C's, and I could get a D- because I was smart enough that I wasn't going to flunk.
Right.
I would be okay with it. So my grades, and I always think, why did not someone notice I'm A+ and D-?
Right.
Because it wasn't like I just didn't apply myself or I skipped school the whole semester or whatever. But it was just. So I think that art saves lives on so many levels, and I know for other people it's music, but it's just creativity, So
And catching those teachers in high school.
oh my gosh,
is
it's
critical.
absolutely critical
Or
for that
grade
age.
school or high
Yeah.
school, I mean, someone's got to be there to sort of really
Right.
nurture and really get you engaged in. But you
Right.
had and then you had our history. The
With
teacher who taught
Mr.
you.
Mr.
history.
Doversberger, from sophomore all the way to senior, we had Friday art history.
Okay,
And that was the most important thing in high school for me.
but then another teacher of yours he would give these class assignments knowing that you would do really well at the assignment,
That's my fourth grade teacher,
right? And talk
Mr.
about,
Mr. Alcott.
yes, Mr. Alcott.
He was everybody's favorite teacher in the fourth grade. I had a neighbor who was really a kind of wonderful guy to me, and he was 3 years older. He says, "Oh, you got to try to get Mr. Alcott again." And he was that cool. And Mr. Alcott realized that I was an artist ahead of my time for that fourth grade age, and he would actually sometimes ask me to draw an essay instead of do an essay.
Mm.
And he would put it up because I was so dyslexic, I couldn't read long stories and stuff in time. And he would do that. And he would put it up on the wall and read the story of the story, the picture story of the story.
So it like validates what you have to say and how you learn.
Now, he was the only one that did that.
Yeah.
And then the class, his classmates could say, wow, look at how good, he would,
Mhm.
he would be uplifted.
Right.
Like my first
because
grade teacher.
whereas other classes he'd be made fun of because he was dyslexic and he couldn't keep up. Yeah, so this was another important teacher.
Yeah, very. And the horrible thing is that he never did anything to any boys ever. The school fired him for being gay.
And they found out.
And so many of the kids came ramming in, and I was late to hear about it because I'd moved out in the country and wasn't in that district. But I went crazy on it, and he wrote letters to everybody who showed up to protect him and said he's going to go to a new school, a different school, and they know why I was fired, and that I have, that I've never done anything to any kids. And
Wow.
yeah,
Oh, that's
it's
so
like the
sad.
one guy that
really got it.
my heart
Right.
gets
Right.
kicked out.
Oh, geez. Wow.
Yeah.
So we've only got a few minutes left. I wanted to ask one more question and maybe open up for a few questions. But I wondered what your plan is going forward with the global warming project, because it's such a massive, large scale project.
Yeah.
What you
yeah.
hope to see happen with it?
Well, I'm really wanting it to go to other cities and hopefully into galleries and be there as long as they want to have it or whatever. And eventually hope somebody buys it so it's in one place. But I'm not going to sell individually.
Right.
I'd rather keep them, in our basement and have them, like sold one at a
Well,
time.
it's a coherent body
Yeah,
of
it
work.
is.
Yeah.
Steve.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so, we're,
But you're still working on a few more pieces.
yeah, I
More
am.
things that are
I'm
part of
adding
it.
some things to it, yeah.
Like there's some additional ones that he just wasn't able to finish before the show last May.
And I finished the ones I knew I had to
You had to
finish, and then I added some tougher ones that
Mhm.
were harder to do. But I think it's going to go to Cincinnati in May for a month at least.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, and I think we're going to try to,
Get it until you-
get it to other places. Like I'd love for it to be in the Art Institute. That's they're significantly contributed to my art life because
Mhm.
I went there and just couldn't. They had to drag me out. It's the first time I was in there. I got another floor to go.
Wow.
They said, come back.
So a lot of that work is abstract. When you show it to scientists, do they get it? Do they get what you're trying to
Not necessarily.
say?
No, not necessarily. Now, like one of the guys that fronted money for this, Frank Levinson, he gets it. He's one of those really creative scientists, and that's why he's a billionaire, because his science, the way he did fiber optics changed the world in fiber optics. And Frank was this little skinny geek, and I was his bodyguard in grade school. And in high school, everybody oh, he's cool. Left him alone. But in grade school, guys were picking on him. And so Frank and I became best friends. So we were best friends. He's really a great scientist. And, also a funny guy.
It's a good question, and it's something that I'd love to have more scientists, to bring in more scientists to look at the work to see if they get it. Because I think that what's really very interesting about that series is when you walk into the gallery, and I think they're very beautiful, and so you're immediately drawn to them because they have the colors and the composition is really beautiful, and then you're staring at this beautiful portrayal of the destruction, the degradation of the earth, and it's just that kind of emotional opposition that's occurring is very disturbing in a lot of ways, because
Which is intentional.
and it's intentional, absolutely,
Not all of it is supposed to be like that, but
to disturb.
yeah, but it's awakening. It's hard to believe it sometimes. That same friend I was talking about, Frank, his daughter somehow got a professorship in the University of Soleimania, Iraq.
It was an American university.
It's American University of Soleimania, Iraq, and she told the professor, the head guy, about my art series, and the university paid to have it taken all the way over to Soleimania, Iraq, and me with it, and spent at least 3 weeks there, and talking to kids and having these kind of conversations, and they brought all kinds of kids in, kids that were trying to apply to that university, and and they came in and looked at it, and so it was it's really cool that it got done that way. And Frank managed to pay for the shipping of all these paintings that are, I have metal frames on them that are heavy, just like angle iron frames, and they were all shipped over there.
Wow. That's pretty neat.
And then they have the Gleesy, what is it called? It's G-clay prints. They made G-clay prints of them.
Actual size.
And then so they have them there in there. It's a permanent
Oh, wow, that's neat.
collection. Yeah.
They're two sizes, but they're close, and they got the two sizes right too.
Yeah.
Which was good.
Well, we're about at.
I'm sorry, I've got to be boring you by now.
No, you're not boring at all. Actually, I could keep talking all day with you. It's very interesting. But does anybody else have a burning hot question to ask before we call it a book club for the day?
Excellent.
Yeah, just thank you so much, David, and Dina too. This has been a real pleasure. So, and thank you all for coming out.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
The crowd.
Yeah.
Good group.
And we will be switching out this whole exhibit this month, and we'll have all new artwork, including new work by Dina and David here at April 1st. So we'll have a whole new gallery to look at. Okay. All righty. Well, thank you again, and I hope to see you next month.
Thank you, Jane.
Now, when you do a book talk that is not an artist talk,
Mhm.
you announce the book in advance so people read it?
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, that's what we normally